my treasurer was from South Carolina. And the chairman of my deacon board was an old deacon, had been there for years. And when I told him what I just told you, he began to cry. And I said, Deacon Williams, you all right? He was almost speechless. And he said, I remember going to vote in Mississippi. And they asked me for money that I didn't have. I remember going back to vote in Mississippi, and they wanted me to recite parts of the Constitution. And he said, son, if you can become Secretary of State and protect our people from that, you go ahead and do it. These were old school lay leaders who knew our history. And one of our problems, you know, we're worried about the schools not teaching our history. I'm worried about us not teaching our history. We're the only people I've ever met that expects the enemy to teach them about themselves. I don't understand that. And I went to the doctor. I didn't tell you this, Bishop. About a month ago, I lost sight in this eye, and they found out I was hemorrhaging from the back, and they've been giving me injections every week for the last month or so. But I went for my eye, but before the man looked at me for my eye, I had to fill out 3 pages of medical history. Not just for me. They wanted to know if my mother or father had cancer or high blood pressure or diabetes. And then they asked me about my I never met my grandfather on my father's side. I mean, 3 pages of medical history because the doctor practices like this. I can't help you solve your problem for the future until I look at your past. And if we don't teach our children, if we don't teach our churches, if we don't teach our communities, if we don't teach this nation the nature of our past, we will never, ever resolve the problems for our future. And in the past, political powers have always attempted to suppress the vote for the people they don't believe will vote for them. Listen, we were in Essex County, New Jersey, all Democrats. All my life, Essex County, New Jersey was Democratic. And back in the days when we had those machines, remember those machines where you pulled the lever down? All of the machines where you pulled the lever down that were in black neighborhoods somehow mysteriously broke down in the afternoon. All Democrats. So what I'm telling you is that we have been exposed to equal opportunity, neglect, and abuse. So this thing is bigger than party. So we got to keep fighting. It's a fight. It's going to be a fight to make sure our people have access to polling places. It's going to be a fight when people standing in line. Isn't that funny? They pass a law that forbids you from bringing water to people in line, which presupposes that they'll have so few voting machines that there'll be people in line. So plan A is let's put the least number of machines over there. That's plan A. But plan B is if they prove to have the stamina to wait in line, let's make them die of thirst. So if they have a plan A and a plan B, then plan C is let's have people moving around intimidating them so they will conclude that it's not worth all that. And if they have a plan A, B, and C, we at least need a plan A. All right. I'm almost out of time. My plane's going to leave me if I don't get out of here. So I want to say, in closing, that elections start long before Election Day, and they end long after Election Day. I was on the phone with lawyers from New York. I'm joining a Supreme Court case about what's happening in North Carolina. In North Carolina, there's a law winding its way through the books, and we're suing with the Brennan Center out of New York to sue North Carolina because they want the legislature to have the final word on elections. The legislature. In New York, in 2001, on September 11th, in addition to the planes knocking down the World Trade Center, it was Election Day. And when the planes hit the World Trade Center, the police department summoned all of the police in Lower Manhattan to go down to the World Trade Center. On Election Day in New York, every polling place has a police officer assigned there. When the police started leaving the polling places, the politicians went to court to say, the police are leaving the polling places, we're unprotected. By the time I got to a key judge downtown, the judge understood why the police were leaving the polling places, but no one in New York State had the statutory authority to stop the election. So you've got the World Trade Center falling, the police are leaving the polling places, the politicians are panicking. No one, not the governor, not the legislature, not the New York Elections Commission, no one had the authority to say, we can't do this. So a judge arbitrarily made the decision, we got to stop voting. So on September 11, 2001, the election in New York was hastily halted. It was rescheduled to happen 2 weeks later, September 26, but it took a vote of the legislature. Because it took the legislature that long to gather itself, to have a meeting, to make a decision, to deliberate. If we have a problem on Election Day, no legislature has the capacity to manage what's happening on Election Day. And by taking the administrative and executive authority from the executive branch of government and the secretaries of state, not only does it become extremely partisan, it is also inefficient and dangerous. But when you're blinded by partisan advantage, you don't think that far. And so many of these states are now controlled by legislatures who want to have the ultimate power and the ultimate authority, which means that we have a war and a struggle even after Election Day. You remember the year 2000, Bush v. Gore, it was the Supreme Court who decided that the votes in Florida would stop being counted, and that's how George W. Bush became president. So our votes are much more significant than electing one person over another. Listen, Raphael Warnock is my man. He's from New York. I'm from New Jersey. I preach for him at Ebenezer every year, and as much as I love him, this is not about him. This is about a struggle of good versus evil, our past versus our future, and whether we want to be a loose confederation of states where every state, like in the book of Judges, does what is right in their own mind, or whether we're going to be America. That's what this struggle is about, and that's what democracy is supposed to offer. And so my word to Bishop and all of you here is that you're up against very organized, well-financed, and otherwise insurmountable odds. And I'll tell you my own confession. As a preacher, I decided some years ago that God really called me to do three things. Number one, preach the gospel, lead folks to Christ. Number two, focus on the intellectual and educational development of our young people. And number three, help people take control of our finances and be financially secure. My thought was, if you have a relationship with God, a well-developed mind, and some money in your pocket, you're free no matter what. But this man is my conscience. and I resigned in 2005 from the U.S. Elections Commission. I have never spoken about voting publicly since that day. Because if I tell everything I know, you might get as discouraged as I am. And after watching black and white, Democrat and Republicans sell us out, turn their backs, and just straight up lie, I have become disillusioned. I have been discouraged. And frankly, you could almost take every politician in this country and send them somewhere, and I wouldn't regret 1 minute of it. But this man called me out of my elections administration retirement and summoned me to tell you some of what I know. And many of our young people are feeling the same way. Our young people say, why vote? You know, we were broke under Bush. We were broke under Obama. We're broke under Biden. I mean, why vote? There's a disillusionment and discouragement in the land, and it's not just among young people, it's among preachers and many of our churches don't care about voter registration. They don't care about activism. They don't care about justice. What they care about is building a nice campus, having a nice TV broadcast, sowing seeds, buying cars, and letting the preacher get rich. That's all they care about. You got some in Georgia. And it can get discouraging. So in response to that, I quote one of my heroes, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., and that is, keep the faith. Don't let discouragement cause you to become so disillusioned that you fail to heed the call of history and accept the challenge that God gives this generation like God gave every generation. God used Frederick Douglass to challenge and speak truth to power. God used Harriet Tubman to go down and bring people enslaved out of slavery. God used W.E.B. Du Bois to change the way we thought. God used Sojourner Truth to inspire women, black and white. God used Martin Luther King Jr. God started all of that by using Richard Allen to say, I'm standing up as a black man. And so when we vote, we're doing exactly what Dr. King said. Dr. King said, if you stand up straight, nobody can ride your back. And so when we vote, we are standing up straight. So let's remember Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. Remember the Shunammite woman whose son was dead, but she was running to the prophet, and the prophet said, how's your son? And she said, all is well. Keep the faith. Be like that dog in the ditch. Y'all know about the dog in the ditch? There was a farmer who had a dog, and the dog fell in a ditch, and the ditch was so deep the farmer couldn't reach the dog, and the farmer tried everything the farmer could to get the dog out of the ditch. And so the farmer finally just gave up and said, you've been a great dog, but I can't get you out that ditch, so let me put you out of your misery quickly. So the farmer started throwing dirt in the ditch to bury the dog and relieve it of its misery. And when the dog saw that the farmer was throwing dirt into the ditch, the dog got mad, and the dog was like, I've been faithful to this owner all my life, and he's going to reward me by throwing dirt on me in the ditch. And as the dirt got higher and higher, the dog got angrier and angrier, but the dog discovered that anger is not a strategy. If he just stayed mad, he was going to die in that ditch. And he looked up and realized that the higher the dirt got, the higher he could climb. And as the dirt came down, he rose up. And the dog, by the time the farmer filled the ditch with the dirt, the dog was able to walk out of the ditch on his own because he used what was meant to kill him, to lift him. I've just stopped by to tell you that when they put dirt in your ditch, when they try to stop you from voting, when they put barriers in your way, just rise anyhow. Rise over the voter restrictions. Rise over the racist conversations. Rise over the hatred at the polling booth. You might be in a ditch, but God will give us the strength to rise. God bless y'all. I'll see you after Election Day.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Soaries, for a powerful presentation today. Now, my sister, my brothers, Dr. Soaries got to get ready to go to fly to Africa. Where's Dr. Watley? Dr. Watley, come up here to this side, please. Brother Thomas, take a picture of me, Dr. Soaries, and Dr. Watley. And where's Cornelius? You can pass out these papers. We're going to pass out some information for you this morning. All right, don't budge. We're going to get ready to go to the next thing.